It was another below average day today, but we made our way up into the 70s overall, feeling really nice and very much like fall should. Clear skies throughout the day, a lot of sunshine to warm us up. We've got high pressure in play, but as we have clear skies at night, you know that those temperatures are going to drop fast. We're already at 50 here in Dothan, 54 down in Panama City, and we're going to hit the 40s again tonight, but this time I think that 30s aren't going to be in the forecast. We'll give you more details on the forecast that's warming up as Fox 34 News at 9 starts now.
Live, covering the Wiregrass. This is Fox 34 News at 9.
And good evening. Welcome to Fox 34 News at 9. I'm Mike Gurspan. Thanks for choosing us as your early Friday night news source. Well, in tonight's top headlines, making news across the Wiregrass state and nation. Henry County Schools celebrating National School Bus Safety Week. Plus, the search continues for a missing Geneva man. And a burn ban is in effect in Slocum due to all the dry weather, and it doesn't look like there'll be any change anytime soon. Now, these tinderbox conditions leads off, as we say, tonight's Fox 34 broadcast. With the weather being so dry recently, wildfires are becoming an increasingly serious concern. Fox 34's Adam Wilson with the story.
With weather conditions in the Wiregrass continuing to stay very dry, the Alabama Forestry Commission has raised the hazard level to red. Due to this, many cities are seeing an increase of wildfires and brush fires, as the dry grass will easily catch flame. After 3 to 4 months of extremely dry,
with the weather being the way it is and dry, I mean, it's usually in the winter months, you know, that the weather is dry always, you know, and this year it's just super dry.
Slocum alone has had 3 fires recently, with one being a house fire that happened on Wednesday, and the other 2 were smaller brush fires. Slocum has even put a burn ban in effect for the past 3 weeks, as the wind could easily spread the fire.
Please, right now is not a time to burn. You know, if we do, call. You know, give us a call or call City Hall, but they're not going to allow anyone burning, because with the wind blowing and all that, it will just get out of hand and it just spreads so fast.
This year in particular has been worse and more dry than previous years on average.
This year we've had more brush fires than most common because of the weather being dry and all. So I'd say this year has been actually, you know, worse.
With no end in sight for this dry period, be extra careful, as any and all fires will spread much more quickly, and burning things like paper or leaves that can get caught in the wind easily is highly discouraged. Back to you.
And this Christmas will mark the 7th anniversary of the Great Elba flood of 2015. Several days of torrential rain caused the Pea River to run outside its banks, and the city was declared a federal disaster area. Today, one can still see remnants of homes and neighborhoods that are no longer inhabitable. To date, around $3.7 million FEMA dollars have gone to tearing down more than 40 homes in the flood zone. Now, as a stipulation, no structure can ever again be built at the same site. Elba Mayor Tom Maddox says the city has spent nearly $700,000 in local match monies, but it's a program that will end this year due to the expense on the municipal budget.
City over $700,000. We feel like that we just can't keep doing it. There are not that many homes left that would be in the buyout program.
And this week, the Elba City Council voted unanimously to end the FEMA flood buyout project, as we say, from the 2015 Christmas flood. Geneva police are still looking for a man who went missing from a local hospital. 45-year-old Jimmy Wingate, who is not from the Geneva area and is reportedly battling mental health problems, was being treated at the Wiregrass Medical Center in Geneva. After being treated, surveillance video shows Wingate leaving the room and letting himself out to leave the emergency department, where he met a Good Samaritan who gave him a ride. They were last seen heading west on Highway 52 towards Sampson. If you have any information about where Wingate may be, you're asked to contact Geneva Police or your nearest law enforcement agency. 2 suspects are behind bars and one is still on the loose after a home invasion in Geneva. On Wednesday, police responded to an armed robbery in the 300 block of East Promenade Avenue. The victims stated that the 2 men entered, robbed them at gunpoint, and fired a single shot into the furniture after one victim attempted to grab the gun. The suspects took an undisclosed amount of cash and ran off. Statements made by the victims led officers to believe that they were deliberately targeted. Police Police would arrest Myron Tyson, nicknamed 1 Cent, and he was charged with 2 counts of robbery. And Keona Hornsby was charged with obstructing a government operation, resisting arrest, as well as possession of marijuana and drug paraphernalia. 36-year-old Keith Simpson is still at large with active arrest warrants for 2 counts of robbery and 1 count of burglary. If you have any information where Simpson may be, you're asked to call Geneva Police once again. Marcus Spanvello is now behind bars in Alabama. Spanvello was extradited from Florida to St. Clair County Jail last night. He's charged with abuse of a corpse in connection with the case of his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Carley. Carley went missing in March from Navarre Beach, Florida. Her body was found 4 days later in a shallow grave near Springville. Spanvello is not directly charged at this time with Carley's death. The license. Jankake Earlia is charged with human trafficking of a minor. Earlia was an internist at the Wellness Medical Center in Trussville. He was arrested in Blount County earlier this month. A hit-and-run call becomes a homicide investigation in Escambia County, Florida. Sheriff deputies say the call originally came in from someone who thought the man was struck by a vehicle. His body was found next to a bicycle on the ground. Authorities say discovered the man was dead with several gunshot wounds. No word yet on the identity of the victim. The Escambia County Sheriff's Office asking anyone with information about what possibly happened to call them. The investigation continues into skeletal remains found on Miramar Beach, and that was Thursday afternoon. Walton County Sheriff's Office investigators and the medical examiner's office spent the morning looking for bone fragments off of Leeward Drive after a resident found a human jawbone while he was clearing land in the area. Investigators believe the remains could have been in the wooded area for more than 2 years. They're reaching out to local law enforcement agencies to see if the bones could possibly belong to missing persons reported in that area.
We'll go back and look at our records as well and see if we had any missing person reports, anything like that that might tie in. And so the next thing is really going to be about trying to identify the victim in this case. And obviously there are a number of tools for that, dental records, DNA, things of that nature. And so we're going to start trying to do that and coordinate with the medical examiner's office and hopefully return this person to their loved ones.
Sheriff Atkinson says once the remains are identified, they'll begin looking for a cause of death. He says it's too early to know if the man was an accident, natural causes, or possibly even foul play. Alabama firefighter battles a blaze at his own home. Vestavia Hills firefighter Jonathan Vickery never imagined he'd be fighting a fire last night that left his family homeless. But he wasn't fighting the flames alone.
It really started to impact us, that we were fighting a fire for one of our own brothers.
And fortunately, no one was hurt, but the fire gutted the family's house, and investigators don't know how it started. Back here in the Wiregrass, the Henry County School District is celebrating National School Bus Safety Week. The week serves as a reminder to all drivers about the rules of the road when in the presence of a school bus. It's also a time for Henry County Schools to show appreciation for the district's bus drivers who provide students with safe transportation to and from school. The Alabama Law Enforcement Agency reports there have been over 300 school bus accidents across the state this year, but fortunately, Henry County Schools has not had a bus accident. So the school system and local businesses got together to provide those in the transportation department with some small gifts.
We had donuts, Money's Forward provided donuts. We've had local insurance agencies that have provided, pens and notepads and different items.
And Beasley says the school system is thankful to these unsung heroes for their hard work and dedication on the job. Well, coming up later, Fox 34 News at 9, a homegrown company which manufactures nuts and bolts, celebrated a very special occasion today. We'll have those details when we return.
And boy, oh boy, I sure am glad that we're starting to get over this cold weather. We've got another cool one tonight, but not super frigid. And those temperatures, the highs, are going to continue climbing through the weekend. I'll give you more details as soon as we come back.
Now, your first alert forecast first on Fox 34 News at 9.
We started things off cold once again this morning, especially the eastern half of the southeast. The 30s stretching all the way from northern Alabama to southern. Lots of 30s in Georgia, also over in South Carolina, North Carolina. They had a lot of 30s today. But if you took it a little bit further to the west, that's where the 40s were in play early this morning, even 50s down in New Orleans. They were on the western side of high pressure. High pressure has clockwise flow, so when you have winds moving like this, the western side of it's going to bring up winds from the south. That's why they were warmer tonight. That's why last night we're going to be warmer tonight in the coming days because of that high pressure as well. They also hit the 80s. Tupelo, Jackson pulling in at 80 and 83 respectively, but with the winds primarily out of either the north or the east here on the eastern side. That's why we were a little bit cooler than the western half of the southeast. So we made it up into at least the middle 70s, exactly where we expected to be. 5 off that average high for this time of year, 16 off of where we should be with that average low. But at least it's not as bad as 20 to almost 25 degrees off of what we would normally see. So a little bit of help here, but we're going to get even some more help as the winds continue to shift in the future. Not going to see anything in terms of rain over at least the next 72 hours or so, but the middle of next week is where we will get some showers to pop back up. Already dropping down into the 40s in Abbeville, Blakely over toward Geneva as well, pulling in at 49. Lots of low 50s for the rest of us. Dew points a lot higher today than they were yesterday. I mentioned how that wind shifts and we're going to get some more moisture in here, and that's going to prevent us from dropping those temperatures too low tonight, but it will still be on the cool side. Everyone out at the Friday night football games. I was out at Cottonwood earlier in the Bear Den, and I sure am glad. I saw blankets, gloves, I saw hats on little kids, some nice toboggans, and a whole lot of heavy jackets out there. So people have been listening to the forecast, and I'm glad that they were bundled up. Tomorrow, we expect those temperatures to make their way into the middle and upper 70s. A little bit of cloud cover moves in, but not too much. Overall, mainly sunny day. Sunday, basically repeat story, just a little bit warmer in the morning and warmer in the afternoon, too. It's going to be upper 70s, even some low 80s out there, but I don't think that we're going to go too far past the 80-degree mark. Basically right on par for what we would expect for a mid-fall day. So 77 for that high temperature Saturday. Overnight into Sunday, we're dropping down to 47. Let's bring it back to the 80s on Sunday, and once again on Monday too, finally starting off in the low 50s for highs or for lows as we go into the beginning of the next work week. So that's a little bit of good news, Mike, and I promise that those temperatures are just going to continue climbing from there. Both the lows and the highs, I'm going to shove it all together. The average temperature of the day is just going to keep going up.
Well, you know, it's good to see also on these last few Friday nights of high school football, the regular season, we finally have pigskin footage weather.
Yes, sir. It's been nice and clear. Get that nice fall crisp to it. So, again, good news is I saw folks that were bundled up, and I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people went home at halftime. If they didn't dress appropriately for it, I don't blame you for getting out of there and going somewhere more.
Yes, indeed. All right. Thanks, sir. Today, Elba Distribution Systems Company, better known as Idesco, held a 30th anniversary celebration with a customer and employee luncheon. Fox 34 News found the homegrown company is a supplier of nuts and bolts along with other hardware products for much of the Southeast. This weekend marks 30 years since Elba Distribution Systems Company, EDSCO, was first opened by Daniel Stevens and his uncle Ed Gannon. The company manufactures nuts and bolts and also imports hardware material, which is shipped to building contractors and other business mainly in the Southeast. But in some instances, the product is shipped nationwide.
Everybody said it was a recession that year. We were crazy. You couldn't sell nuts and bolts, and we thought, well, as long as we keep it a secret, everything will be all right. And just the two of us started, and we were lucky enough to get some very good help.
In 2011, Stevens sold the business to Carrie Whitworth. Initially, she started as a secretary with the company after graduating high school in 1999. She has 20 full-time employees on the payroll to meet the ever-expanding customer reach.
This is a good way to get back and just to get everybody out and about. Our business slowed again with price increases and just the shortage of getting stuff, so to know we can celebrate this is a big feat.
And Elba Mayor Tom Maddox says that EDSCO means a lot as far as local revenue for the city and its small business, the backbone of America.
Sell their products in a large geographic area, and we're just proud that they're part of our business community here in Elba.
In addition to nuts and bolts, the company has expanded into manufacturing a full line of industrial items such as industrial gloves, safety glasses, and even first aid kits and a lot more. And Adesco owner Carrie Whitworth says her company is blessed to have been part of many small communities in surrounding areas of the Wiregrass and beyond since 1992. Well, friends, coming up next, the Alabama Department of Public Health reporting 6 out of the 7 public health districts are currently seeing significant flu activity. The sniffling details coming up in our Fox 34 News at 9 health segment. And welcome back, friends. Well, the state health department is urging Alabamians to get their flu shots because cases of influenza are on the rise and only expected to get worse. Today, our state capitol reporter Maddie Biertempfel heard from health officials on how to avoid the flu.
Now, those with Alabama's Department of Public Health tell me that flu is considered to be widespread in districts. Currently, only the Northern District has not seen significant flu activity. Compared to this time last year, Alabama is well above its baseline levels.
We're anticipating a much more significant flu season this year.
Dr. Wes Stubblefield with ADPH says the state hasn't seen substantial flu activity since 2019, right before COVID. He says the uptick now is likely due to a relaxing of COVID precautions that also protect against flu, as well as slow uptake in vaccines this year.
It's safe to say that flu is here, it's in the state, it's going up, and we need to get protected as quickly as possible.
Jefferson County Health Officer Dr. David Hicks says his county has seen the bulk of cases in Alabama, while the baseline percent of flu-like illness the state reports is typically about 3%. He says Jefferson County is at 5%.
If you compare kind of this time of the year versus last year in Jefferson County, we're seeing about a 20-something% increase than what we saw last year at the same time.
Hicks encourages anyone to get the vaccine because while flu can be mild for some, it can be severe for those who are older or with weakened immune systems.
It puts not only strain on our school systems, it puts strain on our hospital systems, let alone you don't want to be sick and ill.
It takes a few weeks for antibodies to build up after vaccination, so Hicks recommends getting it sooner rather than later. Now, Dr. Stubblefield says another indicator this could be a bigger flu season this year is because in the southern hemisphere, which has opposite seasons, they saw substantial flu activity. Reporting in Montgomery, Maddie Biertempfel.
And along with the flu, the Wiregrass is seeing a rise in COVID transmission levels despite still having low community levels. In the last week, Henry County saw the highest amount of positive test results, with 15.4% of their tests coming back positive. Geneva County saw 14% of their tests back positive. Coffee County had 11.6%. Houston County is at 11.2% of their tests positive. And on the lower side, Dale County, you can see here, has a very low level at 7.3% of tests positive. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices voted to include the COVID-19 vaccine as far as part of the children program. The Alabama Department of Health says even though the COVID vaccine is now included, this does not make it a mandatory vaccine. Vaccines required for immunization for schools and states are chickenpox, pertussis, tetanus, polio, measles, mumps, rubella, and diphtheria. As many as 20% of Americans suffer from acid reflux, but there is new hope for some of the worst cases. Sacred Heart Hospital Emerald Coast is the first in Northwest Florida to offer a minimally invasive procedure to relieve the symptoms of acid reflux, or GERD. The procedure is known as TIF, which is short for transoral incision, less fundal application. It's been around since 2009, but Dr. Thomas Skronowski is the first to perform it in the Panhandle area. He says after getting TIF, about 90% of the patients report having no symptoms at all.
Essentially deploy through a gastroscope, and through the stomach we reinforce the valve that naturally helps us keep the acid where it belongs to digest food and not come up where it gives us heartburn, and allow that valve to work properly and effectively.
Dr. Shadnovsky says the patients go home the same day after a couple of hours of observation. And tonight, the U.S. Department of Education is helping school systems across the nation address mental health issues for students. And a local system plans to take advantage. Fox 34's Robert Smith Jr. with the story.
Mental health is a top priority for me and the school system.
Henry County Schools is hoping to expand mental health counseling services for its students, with millions of dollars coming from the U.S. Department of Education in Washington. Right now, the school system has one social worker to serve students, funded through a state grant, and has to contract with threefold counseling service if a student has a mental health issue.
We've made a lot of progress over the past couple of years with mental health as far as employing, but a lot of that has had to come out of local dollars.
Superintendent Lori Beasley says since they have been using the service since February of 2021, they have seen an increase in students benefiting from mental health counseling.
Threefold actually comes into the class, into the schools. That way they're not missing instructional time for like a half-day checkout, which happens a lot of times when they have to go to Dothan.
Now the U.S. Department of Education is providing $280 million to school systems like Henry County to relieve their pockets and bring in their own mental health coordinators.
If it matches what criteria that we want to see, and with that being said, that might even open the door to where we're able to get more social workers or more counseling involved.
Beasley says while they are interested in using the federal dollars to bring in more help, it could come with a challenge, like hiring.
I think we'll have to do some recruitment and maybe some incentives to bring in the most qualified.
Reporting in Headland, Robert Smith, Fox 34, News at 9.
President Joe Biden delivered remarks on his administration's efforts to reduce the federal deficit. I'm Basil John reporting in Washington why the president is urging voters to keep Democrats in charge of the economy.
And President Joe Biden delivered remarks on his administration's efforts to reduce the federal deficit today. This comes as the U.S. gets closer to the midterm elections early November. Washington correspondent Basil John reports as the president urges Americans to vote for Democrats to keep the country on the path of economic growth.
We have further proof that we're rebuilding the economy in a responsible way.
Friday, the Treasury Department said the annual federal deficit fell by nearly $1.4 trillion to about half of what it was in 2021.
This record deficit reduction includes the cost of my student loan plan and everything else we're paying for.
President Joe Biden credits his policies for making the difference.
The deficit's come down both years that I've been in office.
Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says the president's policies have the country on the right track.
We've advanced an economic plan that finally puts innovation and technology at the forefront of our national agenda.
And with the midterm elections looming, President Biden said Americans should stay away from Republicans' economic plans.
It's MAGA trickle down. The Republican plan would add about $3 trillion to the deficit.
But Republicans say it's, quote, desperate and sad for the president to take credit for economic progress. RNC Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel says it's Republican governors and legislatures that have delivered. For now, both Democrats and Republicans are urging Americans to head to the polls and decide which side should lead the country's economy after November. Reporting in Washington, I'm Basil John.
And the Supreme Court rejected a request to block President Biden's student loan debt relief program. Justice Amy Coney Barrett denied the emergency application to block the program that was filed by a Wisconsin taxpayers group. The loan relief plan will cancel up to $20,000 in student loan debt from millions of borrowers. More than 8 million people have already submitted applications for that program. Other legal challenges to that plan are pending at this time. And President Biden is back on the road to highlight his efforts to revitalize the nation's infrastructure. During a trip to his native Pennsylvania, he spoke at the site of the Fern Hollow Bridge, which collapsed last January, just hours before he visited. The president says 45,000 bridges across the country are in poor condition. The roughly $1 trillion infrastructure package includes $40 billion dedicated to fix them.
When I ran, we're going to build a country from the bottom up and the middle out, not the top down. When the middle does well, the wealthy do very well. So this law is about more than rebuilding our infrastructure. It's about rebuilding the middle class.
Administration officials say repairs on the Fern Hollow Bridge should be completed by December. The House committee investigating the January 6, 2020 21 riot in the U.S. Capitol now has formally issued its subpoena to Donald Trump. The 9-member panel sent a letter to the former president's lawyers today demanding his testimony under oath by mid-November, as well as a number of corresponding documents. The decision by lawmakers to exercise their subpoena power comes a week after the committee made its latest case against the former president. They claim he personally orchestrated a multi-part effort to overturn the results of the 2020 election. It remains unclear how Trump and his legal team will respond to the subpoena, if at all. And former President Trump advisor Steve Bannon learned his punishment today for failing to cooperate with the House committee in its investigation. A district judge sentenced him to 4 months in prison plus a $6,500 fine. A jury convicted him in July of 2 counts of contempt of Congress for refusing to comply with a subpoena from the committee for testimony and for not providing documents about the planning of the January 6th Capitol incident. Trump's former trade advisor, Peter Navarro, is expected to take the stand and to go to trial next month. As for Bannon, the judge said he will hold off on imposing the jail sentence while Bannon appeals. The Pentagon will provide travel funds and support for troops and their dependents who seek abortions but are based in states where they're now illegal. The new policy was announced by Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. He says the military will also increase privacy protections for those seeking an abortion. This means local commanders will not be able to influence whether a service member seeks an abortion. The new policy will go into effect later this year. Russia appears to be turning to its allies in this war in the Ukraine. The White House says Iranian troops are believed to be on the ground in the Crimea, supporting Russian drone attacks. Additionally, Ukraine's military leaders are worried that Russia may launch new attacks from Belarus. Russia has already deployed aircraft and troops to bases in Belarus. This could disrupt supply routes as far as aid and military equipment from the West into the Ukraine.
A new face might soon appear on your pocket change, and some are calling it a win for representation and diversity. I'm Hannah Brandt in Washington. I'll have that story coming up.
This is Fox 34 News at 9. You're watching Mike Gurspan and meteorologist Matthew Wine.
And welcome back to Fox 34 News at 9, second half hour. I'm Mike Gurspan, and once again, thank you for joining us. Well, the Alabama Department of Public Health is reporting that flu is widespread in 6 out of 7 of the state's public health districts. Currently, only the Northern District has not seen significant flu activity. Compared to this time last year, Alabama is well above its baseline level of cases. Dr. Wes Stubblefield with the State Health Department says the state hasn't seen substantial flu activity since 2019, right before the COVID outbreak. He says the increase now is likely due to a relaxing of COVID precautions that also protect against the flu, as well as slowing the uptick in vaccines this year.
I just say that flu is here, it's in the state, it's going up, and we need to get protected as quickly as possible.
And Dr. Stubblefield encourages Alabamians to get their shot now because it takes a few weeks to build up antibodies, and we're not too far off from the holiday gatherings. Alabama school officials are increasingly relying on alternative pathways to get teachers into classrooms as the nation deals with a teacher shortage. Certain methods include certifying those with college degrees who want to teach but don't have formal training in how to do so. AL.com reports statewide 3% were teaching using emergency certificates during the 2020-2021 school year. Council for Leaders in Alabama Schools Director Vic Wilson says becoming a strong teacher is possible without traditional training, but school officials need structure in place to help them to do so. And a new phase could appear on your pocket change rather soon. Asian American actress Anna May Wong is the latest person to be put on the quarter as part of a new series of focusing on celebrating important women in American history. Anna Brandt explains why experts are calling this an important win.
From the silver screen to silver-colored coins. Anna May Wong is about to be minted in American memory.
She's really the first major Chinese-American movie star, primarily in the 30s and 40s. And she's a great icon of style and art.
On Monday, the U.S. Mint will begin shipping quarters featuring the actress, making her the first Asian American on U.S. currency.
Having this symbol of U.S. commitment to diversity is really important to our community.
Chinese American Museum Director David Uy says the coin's real value is more than 25 cents.
Someone that's an underrepresented story represented in currency, it really is it's a step forward for this country.
Anna May Wong's time as an actress was marked by discrimination. She often faced bias and was cast in stereotypical roles, which she vocally fought against.
Her beauty, grace, and talent really broke past barriers.
George Washington University professor Dr. Alexa Alice Jobin says this honor is a part of Wong's ongoing legacy.
Even in her death, she's doing this work of representation.
And Jobin says the racism against Asian Americans that Wong faced isn't only in the past.
This is an occasion for us to remember that some of these problems persist.
While this tribute is about pocket change, advocates believe it's also about a bigger kind of change.
It can be a conversation starter.
It's about telling a complete American story.
In Washington, I'm Hannah Brandt.
And friends, it is time to check on Chief Meteorologist Matthew Wine for that all-important weekend forecast.
Absolutely, Mike. It's definitely an important one, and it's a clear one, too. We don't have anything to worry about besides some cloud cover moving in and some temperatures moving up. We'll give you more details on the extended forecast and that next chance for rain as soon as we come back.
Now, your first alert forecast with meteorologist Matthew Wine.
I know I showed a lot of this yesterday, the drought monitor, how the conditions are starting to worsen here in the southeast, especially along the panhandle, far southern Alabama, even moving into southwest Georgia. We've got that moderate drought, a level 2 out of 5. Big reason for this, we haven't had any sort of tropical systems to bring some rain. Even a couple of inches would really help make up for what we have seen in a deficit over the past couple of months. And even here, right in the heart of the tri-state, there's that little bit of orange. That's the severe category. There's a lot more of that further out west. Right in the heart of the United States across the Great Plains, we've got a whole lot of the extreme and exceptional drought, and across the western portions of the Intermountain West and over toward California too. California just seems to be in an eternal drought. I mean, they've had some really good years here or there, but they've got a lot of people, and that factors into the drought conditions as well, how much water is being used and needing to be replenished. Now, we do have some water moving across the country. It's up in the Pacific Northwest, in the far northern reaches of the Cascades and the Rockies, and that system is going to continue spreading eastward, and we're going to get a big long cold front associated with it that's going to stretch all the way down here to the southeast. And what you'll notice here in just a second is that a lot of the western half of the country is going to start turning that deep blue that we have seen recently and are still seeing along the eastern seaboard. We're going to get a lot more of these bright oranges and the reds starting to pop up here in the central U.S. and across the eastern half too. So here comes the reds and the oranges, and here comes the blue from that new system that's moving in. And we're going to get that cold air to eventually make its way to the eastern half of the U.S., but it doesn't really reach all the way down here. In fact, the biggest impacts from this are going to be some heating out ahead of it and then eventually some rain along the cold front itself. But you can tell that this cold air is digging down around the center of low pressure here, and out ahead of that low and out ahead of the cold front itself, we've got some much warmer air. Sometimes compressional heating occurs just ahead of the cold front, and I can explain more about that another day. Not enough time for science tonight, though, but enough time to give you the forecast of when it's going to rain. We've got a lot of snow associated with this big system that's moving across the mountains. As it continues its eastward progression, we'll get rid of most of that snow, and we're going to make it more organized over the central portion of the U.S. It's a little bit faster than the runs that we talked about yesterday. A lot of those runs are bringing it in on Wednesday during the afternoon and evening. Now it's bringing in a little bit earlier. Notice this timestamp behind my head here of the morning hours on Wednesday when that front moves through, so that'll most likely be our best chance for rain. And then there will be another system that comes across the southern half of the U.S. on Friday and probably make it here over the Halloween weekend. Out in the tropics, we're all clear there, so there's some good news, and we've still got mainly clear skies on Saturday, Sunday, more clouds building in Monday and Tuesday, and then that rain comes up for us on Wednesday. Back to dry conditions directly after that, Mike.
All right, Matthew, we definitely appreciate that, and maybe a little return to summer this weekend.
A little bit, yes, sir. The very end of summer, not those peak summer days where you get the 90s. we won't be seeing anything remotely close to that.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Coming up next, Fox 34 Sports, the Trojans on top in the Battle of the Belt. How they brought the strap back to T-Roy.
Fox 34 News at 9 Sports starts now.
And welcome back, sports fans. We begin with the battle for the belt. Troy taking on South Alabama. A lot on the line for the Trojans. A 5th straight win over South. Also a 5th straight win this season, which will also make them bowl eligible at 6-2 this year. Here we go. End of the first quarter. DK Billingsley takes the give, fights his way for the first down. Troy inside the 5. And then first play of the second quarter, that's Billingsley, and he stumbles and bumbles in for the score. Carter Bradley goes deep from Troy's 45-yard line, and he has a man wide open. It's hauled in by Jalen Wayne. Beautiful catch there inside the 5. But a review was needed, and on the second look, that ball moving as Wayne hit the ground, so the reception was ruled incomplete. But here South would come away with a field goal. Troy leads 7-3. Troy still going to call that. Jared Dodge trying to make a play, but his pass picked off. Troy's defense makes another stop, and the Trojans go on to win a tight one by the score of 10-6 and win their 5th straight game. Congratulations to them. Auburn has a bye week, but here's a look at Auburn's final 5 games of the regular season. Next week at home against the Razorbacks of Arkansas, followed by a road trip to Mississippi State in week 10. Back-to-back home games against Texas A&M and Western Kentucky. And, of course, the all-important Iron Bowl. That will be 2 days after Thanksgiving, November 26. Bama hoping to bounce back from last week's loss to Tennessee. The Crimson Tide fell short of Knoxville to give Alabama's first loss of the season, but successful teams know not to dwell on the past. Head coach Nick Saban says it's important to learn from those mistakes, though, so the team can be better prepared for the Bulldogs this coming weekend.
I think attention to detail and sweating the small stuff is really what our team needs to do better. Too many penalties, eliminate bad plays, win this play, focus on this play, win this play, do simple better. Don't make things so complicated. Just focus on, here's my alignment, here's my responsibility, here's my technique, and do that one play at a time. I think, sometimes you get too result-oriented. When you get result-oriented, you're worried about what you're going to score in golf or what are we going to win the game rather than focusing on the process of what you actually have to do.
And by the way, kickoff with the Tide versus the Bulldogs set for 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. And that's it for Fox 34 Sports this Friday evening. Cousin Wine, some call him even Uncle Wine, and myself with some final words of wisdom when we return. Matthew, it's an Airbnb that will shiver me timbers. A pirate ship that was turned into a houseboat in Virginia went viral just a few months ago. Now you can rent a night or two in that exact boat. The Jolly Lodger, has new owners who have turned it into a place for guests to feel like they're part of a treasure-seeking adventure.
This is the coolest thing. My brother loved pirates growing up. He would love this. The 2-bedroom boat doesn't leave the shore and comes complete with a crew of skeletons, a full kitchen, and modern amenities. Rentals run about $240 a night on Airbnb. You know what? I think that's worth it. A couple nights on there for about $500.
That's not really that expensive, I thought it would be a lot more than that.
If you're a big pirate enthusiast, I think it's pretty cool. If you're a big football enthusiast, where should you go?
10:50.